KMJ. School uniforms in Fresno high schools. Good idea? Not so good. We talked about that earlier in the week. Bullard High School contemplating such a thing. That's our buzz question of the day. Get to kmjnow.com, log on, and tell us what you think. We'll talk about it forthcoming here on the Austin Hill Show. It's Talk Radio 105.9, the FM KMJ. President Obama saying some very sobering and, I guess, sobered things about the United States economy in the aftermath of the election on Tuesday. Now he's on his way to the country of India, taking with him 34 warships among practically a city full of staffers. They're going to actually occupy, I believe it's the Taj Mahal Hotel. Literally, the Obama staff, the Obama traveling staff, will take up the entire hotel. I don't know what to make of this. On the newsline with this, Congressman George Radanovich from here in the Valley. Congressman Radanovich, welcome back to the Austin Hill Show. Good to have you with us.
Austin, how are you? Great to be on the show.
Well, it's always a pleasure. Let's talk about the president's trip here to India. 34 warships to safeguard the president and to guard the coasts of the country of India, as I understand it, while he's there. Let me start with this. I mean, is this a normal thing when a president goes to visit a foreign country? Do we have that much military power traveling with him?
I don't think so, Austin, and I think it's much more elaborate than is when a president does their normal travel experiences around the world, which, that's an essential element to being president of the United States. But the cost of the trip and the timing of the trip, I think in particular, after Americans sent the message to Washington that government's too big and needs to be reduced, he couldn't have made a bigger mistake, I think, just on the timing aspect of this. But the trips themselves, those are good things that occur, but the cost of this thing is, I think, far and beyond any trips that other presidents have taken.
Why would the president dispatch 34 warships to safeguard the coast of India when that isn't necessary? I mean, I understand that India has problems with terrorism. We saw an extraordinarily tragic terrorist incident back on our Thanksgiving Day holiday back in 2009. Most Americans paid no attention to that, but that was terrible and devastating, and a lot of Americans were killed there. In many ways, it seems to me, Congressman, that India faces challenges with security that we don't yet face here in the United States. But nonetheless, 34 warships, I mean, why would the president choose to do this? And secondary to that, does that not leave us with insufficient military power in certain other waters around the world? How would you assess that?
I'm not sure about that, but I think the president owes an explanation to the American people for what does this trip get the American people? I mean, I don't understand myself why. Sure, the president got an invitation from the Indian Prime Minister, and that's all well and good, but what purpose does it serve the United States? I mean, it's in a kind of a dark way of looking at this thing. The best time for the president to leave the country is when he's been shellacked by the American people, so he doesn't have to sit around and listen to the complaints that people had and the way they voted in this election. But that in of itself is no excuse to leave the country with a price tag for a trip like this. So I think that there's reason for the president to do international trips. I think the timing of this thing is just ridiculous, and he should be making a case that he could save a lot of money by either not going or gearing the trip down. And whatever he hopes to accomplish by this trip, I think he could do it with a lot less money.
All right, Congressman George Radanovich on the newsline here on Talk Radio 105.9, the FM KMJ. Congressman, let's talk a little bit about the timing of this trip. You call it ridiculous. You're certainly not surprised by this, though. He's had this trip on the schedule here for, to my knowledge anyway, at least the last 3 weeks. It struck me that he was very intentionally planning on leaving town, traveling to another country, doing a diplomatic trip, realizing that the results of the election were not going to be favorable for his agenda and for his party. I'm wondering, from your vantage point, do you believe that things turned out worse than what President Obama was actually assuming they would end up after election night?
Well, I think it would have been worse had we been able to win the 10 seats necessary to take over the Senate. But nevertheless, this kind of shift in the majority has not happened since the Truman days, or even back further. So it's been, he tried to compare it to Reagan's midterm and Clinton's midterm, but this was by far more. And he set a record with this one for the first time in almost 80 years. And so it's really hard for him to be able to get away from it. And I think he's shocked. The big question, too, is whether or not he is going to give in to less spending in the agenda of the new majority in Congress. And that's going to be, this guy is a dyed-in-the-wool liberal. He has no, there's no doubting that right now. So it'll be really interesting to see how he behaves, because he really did get his head handed to him in this election.
Interestingly enough, to your point, Congressman Radanovich, we received news at the top of the hour, 9 o'clock, from Fox News Radio that apparently the Obama administration has now announced that they will entertain sustaining marginal tax rates at their current level. That is to say that they would entertain perhaps sustaining these so-called Bush tax cuts. I don't like calling them Bush tax cuts, and you and I have had that conversation before. I think of them as the potential Obama tax increases. Nevertheless, we got word from Fox News Radio that the White House is now reporting that, hey, that's negotiable. That said, you will, and you're just in your final few weeks here serving in the U.S. Congress, but you will be back in Washington with the rest of the House of Representatives and the Senate for what we affectionately, I don't know what it feels like if you're in this situation, but we affectionately call it a lame duck session of Congress.
Well, it truly is, yeah.
Well, okay. And what do you expect to transpire? What can you expect to have happen? Will the issue of keeping marginal tax rates where they are, will that come up? Will there be discussion of maybe some of President Obama's pet items, like a national energy tax, a cap-and-trade tax? Will there be discussions of amnesty for illegal immigrants before many of the Democrats depart? What can we expect from this lame duck session?
Well, I think the good news is that you're not going to see things like global warming come up. A lot of people were concerned that if Nancy Pelosi loses the majority, that there's going to be this gotcha of legislation that comes up and passes all the pet projects that she was wanting to pass, as a gotcha while she's leaving the House. That's really not going to happen. I mean, can you imagine wanting to follow Nancy Pelosi now on any legislative agenda when, because of her, you just lost your seat as a Democrat during this last election? You're not going to be inclined to want to do any of that stuff.
I would think not.
Kind of led down a wrong path with her. So I don't think so. And also you've got the beautiful attribute of the Senate, which is to stall and stop everything. So even if those votes did come up the House and pass, the Senate
yes.
has that wonderful record of not doing anything, so they would be able to stop that in a good way. So I don't see that. I think that the question is whether or not we extend the Bush tax cuts and in total, meaning for rich and poor alike and everybody.
Right, exactly, for everybody, sure.
Yeah, for the idea that when you do that for everybody, it has the best potential of creating jobs in the economy, and that's the whole reason you do this.
Well, and Congressman, you know as well as better than most of us, multiple economic advisors to the president have recommended to him, don't let those tax cuts expire. Sustain them. The last thing you want to do in this recessionary economy is raise taxes. And prior to 9 a.m. this morning, based on what I've observed, the president has insisted, no. We want higher taxes. We need to tax the rich because we need that money. It's very devastating. Of course, many of those economic advisors to the president have since resigned from his administration. But that said, do you anticipate taking up that marginal tax rate issue in the lame duck session?
Well, here's what I think. I mean, regardless of what he said, they are going to do their best to try to extend the Bush tax cuts, but not for the wealthy, wherever you want to tag that. I guess the last time was anybody who thinks comes over $250,000. And
right.
I think the Republicans in the House, and I think with this stronghold in the Senate, are going to say, no way, Jose, it's got to be done for everybody, because of the economic stimulus that provides, that policy
right.
provides. So I think there's still going to be that battle. He is the true believer that government spending is what creates jobs. It's government that grows jobs and all that BS. It's all that's tried and true for what he believes, and that's why he wants to continue to raise taxes to feed the government machine. And he's not going to change from that ideology, I don't think, at all. But I think the chances are really good about getting these extensions 100%, for everybody. So that
good.
It goes just economic stimulus. I really do feel
that's what we need.
Yeah, I do. Well, it is what we need, and it's that recognition that even though, some people in business were responsible for this economic downturn, you can't vilify business and raise taxes and increase government spending as a means of getting us back on track, and that's what this president tried to. He repeated the FDR Great Depression game plan that didn't work. So, he didn't learn from history at all.
All right. Congressman George Radanovich on the Newsline. Listen, I appreciate you joining us. At the end of the day, with respect to the president's trip to India, which I believe he takes off later today, the 34 warships sent to dispatched to protect the shores of it, that does not suggest to you that the president is an additional danger. Because I loathe the president and his ideas and the things he's doing to the country at the same time. And I know you feel the same way, Congressman. I want no harm to come to this man. I want my president, whoever that is, to be protected. But the 34 warships should not suggest to us that he is in increased danger going to India, more so than he might have been a year ago or 3 years ago.
Oh, I don't think so at all. And it's the size of his entourage that makes the need for security greater as well. So you've got to really look at the size of the entourage he's taking. Presidents before then, all of them have been able to travel much more cheaply than this gentleman, but he seems to have that entitlement attitude that he can get away with these things, which I'm surprised he is, given the message that was sent at this election.
I hear you. Congressman Radanovich, thanks very much for joining us. We'll look forward to talking again soon. And thanks very much for the update. Congressman George Radanovich from here in the Valley with his thoughts as to what lies ahead here in the final few weeks of this current Congress. What happens to our marginal tax rates after the current rates expire December 31st of this year, and the president's safety traveling to India? 34, I just can't get over this, 34 warships. Oh, my God. It's Talk Radio 105.9, the FM KMJ. When we come back, more on drug issues and Visalia and politicians protecting us all from McDonald's. It's just ahead. Stay with us.